people say you're Satoshi?
I got an email from him in August 2008. That was the first email he sent anybody.
What was the email about?
He was asking, is this... I sent him exchanged a few emails suggesting from the academic side, when they saw Bitcoin, they were dismissive.
If I could go back in time and told you that Bitcoin will be 100K one day, would you have believed me? Okay, Mom.
Okay.
Hi, Adam.
Hi.
You're in Taipei, and
I am.
you went to the National Palace Museum in Taipei.
Yeah.
How was it?
Yeah, it's cool. Well, because Blockstream makes the Jade hardware wallet, we saw almost a whole floor with different Jade artifacts, knives, and boxes and jewelry and all kinds of different things, actually. So we were learning more things about the material. Apparently it's much harder and tougher than I was thinking it might be.
Why is it called Jade?
The Blockstream Jade is called Jade because we have a wallet, the green wallet, which is a Bitcoin, and Liquid. Liquid is a Bitcoin layer 2. So the wallet is called green. There's a reason it's called green, which is there was an older Bitcoin concept called a green address. So originally the wallet was called green address, but it got shortened to Blockstream Green. And then when we were making a hardware wallet, we wanted something connected with green. So Jade is traditionally green, right? That's the most famous color for a jade gemstone.
That's a beautiful name. I think a lot of people are very curious about you because people are calling you the godfather, the legend, and I am really curious. So you grew up in London. How does the legend's childhood look like?
I was somebody who liked mathematics and got a computer, like a home computer. So for somebody interested in mathematics and science and things like that, a computer is quite an interesting thing to explore and learn how to program it. So I taught myself basic and then assembly code, machine code on this computer, which is the low-level programming. So it's quite an interesting experience. And so when I did the next level of education in the UK is between 16 and 18, it's A-levels they call it. And so there was no computer programming taught at this time, right? This was in 1989. So, but when I went after that, 18 to 21, the university degree, there was programming, like software engineering. So I did software, but it kind of connected back to teaching myself about programming when I was younger.
You reserve engineered video games, I saw.
Yeah, well, it was something interesting to do on these computers to see if you could modify the game. So there were ways you could interrupt the game so that you could get into some kind of programming level, and then try modifying different, look through the memory for things that look like maps. And so if you could find a map and like guess the format, you could, add extra objects or extra sprites into a room. So you could fill the room up with sprites and it would overload, so it would go very slow. So you do fun things with it, basically, just trying to modify the game or work out what it's doing.
Wow. The reason why people call you the legend is because you invented Hashcash, and Hashcash inspired Satoshi and the POW, Bitcoin mining process. It's so crazy. Like, can you tell us the story?
So how I did that is at university, I got interested in encryption and digital signatures and things you could build with that. So the reason I found it interesting was I was aware of the encryption process because a friend of mine at university was implementing it as a kind of master's project. So he explained it to me. And then PGP, the software for encrypting email, was released, but it had social implications. So it could do something novel and interesting where individuals could encrypt an email and a government, even a spy agency, couldn't decrypt it, which was like a very novel concept, and changed the capabilities for individuals versus to organize and communicate without government interfering. And of course, like the internet itself had some of that phenomena, right? When people were first able to self-publish or, run a blog like you do, that was something upsetting for big media companies and the government. So it was something in that direction, but even more. I thought that was interesting and tried to find out if there were other ideas like that. And so then I found a cypherpunks list, and they were using encryption to make anonymous email. Mm-hmm. The way it worked is that volunteers would run servers to help make the emails anonymous. So I ran one of those, and what I was finding is that people would spam through it. And normally if you get spam, what they would do is try to block the sender, like block the server they were sending their mail from, or block their email address. But because it's anonymous, you can't block it. You don't know who sent it by design, right? So I had to think of another solution. So I thought, well, the problem is it's free. There's no cost to sending an email. So I tried to find a way to create a cost to sending an email. And of course, it's, any kind of online payment is not suitable for micropayments. This was before PayPal. It was very difficult to get the ability to process a credit card. That you need a business and you would need to do some things. So for the average person, they couldn't receive a payment. And anyway, that wouldn't be private. I know I like something private. So I found a way to create a cost. So make a stamp by doing some work on your computer for a few minutes that the recipient could verify. And that was like a digital postage stamp. So it had a cost. So I published that on the list, like implemented it, published source code, and it caused people to realize that this was like digital gold because it was scarce. Mm-hmm. Most digital things are infinitely copyable, right? People would copy music, copy videos, and there's almost nothing anybody could do to stop them with file sharing. So finally there was something hard to copy. And so basically that started many years of people trying to work out how to make electronic cash using proof of work, but it was actually hard to make it work. There are technical complications of coordinating on the internet to prevent it being spent twice and things like that. So there were a few ideas. So I published it in 97. By 1998, there were a few ideas. People might have heard about B-Money or BitGold, but they weren't implementable. They were just ideas. And so it wasn't until Satoshi released Bitcoin that somebody had found a solution to these problems. And he didn't discuss it with people first. He just implemented it and then released it. I got an email from him in August 2008, but I think that was the first email he sent anybody. And of course, I didn't realize that it was a pseudonym. I thought that was his name, right? So
what was the email about?
He was using Hashcash, and I had it implemented in a paper describing it. So he was writing I think he'd already implemented Bitcoin, the software, or a beta version, and he was writing a paper to explain it to release. And so he wanted to know how to cite it, because it wasn't like the Hashcash paper wasn't published in an academic publication. It was just on my website. So he was asking, is this the correct way to cite it? I sent him exchanged a few emails suggesting some other systems that he might want to read or look at. And one of them was B-Money. So he actually cited that as well. But I think it was me. He didn't seem to be aware of it. So I think it was me that ended up giving him something else to look at, which he realized was very similar to Bitcoin. So he cited it.
What was the impression you got from the email? Did he say thank you? Was he like super nice?
Yeah, it was just polite and focused on the point. And actually, I didn't release the emails for a long time, but I released them as part of the COPA trial earlier in the year. So they're online now. It's just like 5 or 6 emails, something like that. So not very long.
When the Bitcoin white paper came out, what was the reaction from the community and what was your impression?
The original electronic cash paper was by David Chaum in 1985, I would say, over 20 years by the time that Bitcoin was released, right? And there were like hundreds of papers about how to do this, and each one of them was trying to improve it a little bit or, you know, make something better. And so they had a very fixed idea of how it should work, and Bitcoin didn't work anything like these papers. So from the academic side, when they saw Bitcoin, they were dismissive because they're like, you know, they assumed it should have a central server. They assumed it should have very strong privacy, and it didn't. Now, there's a reason why it might not, which is it's hard to make that kind of privacy when there's no central server. And so you could see that's, you know, you couldn't say, well, Satoshi should have used that because it doesn't work in a decentralized system. But that was their reaction. They were like, oh, it's not good. So the academics were very dismissive for, I don't know, maybe 4 or 5 years until until Bitcoin became bigger, and they realized, well, you know, their 23 years of ideas never went anywhere, and this is going somewhere. So maybe they should look at it. And for me, I was, because I was more doing applied things, and I was aware of those electronic cash systems. So I thought it was unfortunate that it didn't have as much privacy as them, but I understood why not. The main question I had was, will it bootstrap? Because I tried out some of the earlier centralized systems, and they didn't get mass adoption. And actually, the DigiCash one was a company in the Netherlands, and it failed financially. So that was the end of it, right? And it was centralized, so that was the end of the coins. You couldn't verify them anymore. So my main question was like, will it bootstrap? You know, will enough people become interested and use it? You can see from the emails published by Marty Malmy, who was working with Satoshi on documentation and websites and a bit of code after it was released, that really it didn't look like people were using it heavily. So there's another guy who was mining in 2009, Dustin Trammell. He did a podcast explaining the experience. And he mined it for, I don't know, some months, and then he got bored and like left for a few years. And he runs a VC firm called Trammell Ventures now, investing in Bitcoin companies. But he was explaining what it was like, you know, that they were just hobbyists. There was no price, no value. They would exchange coins just to test it, just to have fun, right? So I mean, I wasn't actively doing that. I just read some things and thought, okay, let's wait and see if it bootstraps. And eventually it did, right? People got used to the fact that it works in a different way, you know? Like the security comes from miners, sort of honest miners competing versus dishonest ones. So it's kind of like an arms race, 50-50 sort of, but you make more money generally if you mine honestly than dishonestly. With a central server, it's extremely secure and hard to attack unless the server's dishonest. Whereas with Bitcoin, there is no server, so it's not possible for any central party to become dishonest or fail and kill the system. But the security level is sort of more even kind of thing. So it took people a while to accept that is okay.
If I could go back in time and told you that Bitcoin will be 100K one day, would you have believed me?
I mean, I would have been okay with it being worth $1 when I read it. I was thinking, because the previous system, DigiCash system, they ran a demo server. There was no way to send money into it, but they ran it, and they promised they would never issue more than 1 million coins. And so myself and some of the people on the cypherpunks list thought, well, maybe we can force it to have a value by selling things for it, just treating them as $1. So, you know, I sold some t-shirts that I was making with encryption software on, and other people sold other things. But the problem was the company went bankrupt, you know, like not very many weeks into this experiment. So when I was saying I'll wait to see if it bootstrapped, like if people would adopt it, I got more active in 2013 because I think the price had got to $100, and I was like, okay, I knew it had already gone past somewhere, but like $100, okay, there's no arguing that's bootstrapped, right? So then I spent a lot of time doing what people do, go down the rabbit hole and read everything, trying to learn more about it.
And people say you're Satoshi.
No, it's not me. I mean, I understand why they look for people who were, programmers interested in electronic cash before. And of course, there are going to be some number of people like that just because they found it interesting, right? And I happen to be one of them, but it's not me.
I always wonder, so we have AI now and we can launch spaceship in the space, but we cannot figure out who Satoshi is. How is that possible?
Well, I think he must have used anonymity systems, right? Like Tor and things like that. Because, there are other people that tried not very hard to be anonymous and they made mistakes and they got caught, like they got identified, or they were doing something like the Silk Road guy. He made a straight up mistake and posted under his own name about Silk Road and then used a pseudonym afterwards. So of course, as soon as somebody found the post under his own name, all the guessing was gone, right? In the case of Bitcoin, like people tried for many years to look through all of the forum posts, try and guess, and clearly there's no information because people would have found it by now. Right. And I think he stopped participating. By the time I read all the forum posts in 2013, he'd left already by a couple of years. I think he stopped somewhere in 2011. So, if he's not communicating, there's no more emails, there's no more forum posts, there's no new information. So I think we're probably never going to know.
And it's better for Bitcoin.
Yeah, I think it is. It's curious if he did that by design, if he thought it'd be better for Bitcoin, or maybe he just thought it's risky.
Well,
there's also a timing thing. So Gavin Andreessen, who was one of the developers early on, announced that he had accepted to go and give a talk at the CIA, like the intelligence agency in the US. And people were surprised that he would do that because it's kind of, maybe they wouldn't like it. And so it wasn't long after that Satoshi stopped participating on the forum. So I don't know. It's not clear if that was the reason. But I think in any case, if you wanted to be anonymous, you'd have to stop at some point. The more you would keep going, eventually you might make a mistake, or people might care to try and identify him. And there's more risk if you're using online protocols like Tor. There's actually a live connection through the network, right? So if somebody's trying to identify you while you're using it, it's much more possible for them to find who's on the other end of the connection than if it's all gone and it's in history, because that live connection isn't there anymore, so you can't try and search for it while it's being used. So yeah, I'm thinking that another reason he could stop is that it's become more widely known and there are more users, so it's more likely for there to be interest in identifying him.
Well, that's the best explanation I've heard. I also want to talk about Blockstream. You're the CEO and co-founder. Can you tell us about Blockstream?
Yeah, so I mentioned that I was thinking in 2013 that Bitcoin is, well, I thought this at the beginning, like in 2009, but one of the things I was thinking is that Bitcoin is not very private. So in 2013, I realized, okay, it's bootstrapping. People are going to use it. They are using it. And so I tried to read all the technical information. And then I thought, well, maybe I can find a way to improve the privacy. Because I had a background in doing that kind of cryptography and reading those papers and implemented some of them in a library. So I spent some time trying to find a way to do that. And so I found a way to do it, which is now called confidential transactions. And so I thought maybe it could be added to Bitcoin. So I talked to the developers in IRC and realized that it's quite difficult to make changes to Bitcoin. So then I tried to find a way to make Bitcoin more modular so that you could do something permissionless without adding things to the main chain. And that's where the sidechain, like layer 2 idea came from. But that then became quite complicated because it's a lot of things you need to implement. So I realized, okay, you're going to need a company. So I raised money with venture capitalists to start Blockstream in 2014. The sidechain and confidential transactions was 2013, and then 2014 we'd got the first funding and recruited some of the developers who had been explaining answers to my questions as I was learning. So the people that were doing a very technical programming on the Bitcoin internals, you need that skill set to make another layer. So I recruited some of them to join the company as well.
And have you found really good, talented people in Taiwan this time?
Yeah, there are definitely some people who are working on Bitcoin and sort of developer meetups and things like that. And the technical university, NTUT, they have a lab. We have agreed to be a co-sponsor of the lab at the IT and management department with computer science students. And Plan B Network is the other co-sponsor with Tether. And so, yeah, I think we'd be interested in people to submit CVs if they're interested in work. And in the future, we might be hiring technical people in Taiwan. And actually, we are quite international. So we have people who are working for Blockstream from home in Australia, New Zealand, Europe, Canada, America, everywhere, really. Even, Japan. It's like all kinds of places. Wherever there's somebody who is good at a particular job that we need to get done, then we'll do that as well. But also, of course, in Taiwan, there are, initiatives and business opportunities for real world assets. And Liquid is a layer 2. So people are probably more familiar with Lightning layer for Bitcoin, which is for sort of retail payments and micropayments. And Liquid is another layer 2. So people use it for different things. They use it for a way, sort of an intermediate step between Bitcoin and Lightning. So there are Liquid wallets that are also Lightning wallets, and that works quite well. And they're using Boltz Exchange, which is a trustless service to swap. But Liquid is also heavily used for sort of financial transactions, shares and bonds and stablecoins and things like that. So it's a whole ecosystem of companies and financial use cases and assets issued on the network. Actually, the network is operated by companies that are using it, basically. And so there are a mixture of companies, sort of wallets and APIs that use Bitcoin and crypto exchanges and actually, a stock exchange. So quite wide range of people using it and operating it, and members of this kind of Liquid members group. So yeah, I think that's another reason that we can look to hire maybe more on a sort of business development or solution architect kind of role for these kind of use cases in Taiwan itself as well.
Like, people are going to be so excited. It's really late. Thank you for your time, but I have a last question. It's really important because as I walked in today, you were holding bubble tea, and I want to know, what is your favorite flavor?
Well, it's just tea with milk, basically.
No bubbles?
Bubbles.
Bubbles, tea with
course,
milk.
bubbles, yeah.
Big one or small one? The bubbles.
I think they're quite large, yeah.
Thank you for your time, and thank you for sharing.
Of course.
We hope to have you back sometime in the future.
And then you can cut it. I mean, I'll just put it like here or something,
Yeah,
right?
cool.
And then I'll turn it on. And then if you get it quickly enough, you can see the screen. So now it's on the setup.